Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to pull out the key insights from really interesting source material for you. Today, it's an important report called Who's America? And our mission really is to unpack its strategy and its lasting impact based purely on what the source says. What's really striking, and the report stresses this, is that the Trump administration's actions aren't seen as just, random policies. No, it's laid out as a very deliberate, systematic plan. And it's guided by this huge 922-page document, Project 2025. The report calls it a policy Bible designed to, and this is their term, institutionalize Trumpism and fundamentally change the executive branch.
Yeah, and the crucial link here, the report points out, is this core legal idea, a really broad take on the unitary executive theory. Basically, this view treats the president's power as, well, absolute. All federal agencies report directly to the president, no independence. And that's the justification, according to the source, for taking apart the independence of places like the DOJ or the FBI. It's not just policy tweaks. The report describes it as a kind of shock and awe strategy, really designed to sidestep the usual way government works.
Okay, so given that framework for power, how does the report say this approach is actually redefining who counts as American? Whose America is it?
Well, it hits on several fronts. Take immigration. The report argues it wasn't just about security, it was about national redefinition. Yeah, you see things like the zero-tolerance policy. That led to, the forcible separation of over 5,000 kids from their parents. Documented trauma resulted, right? And then the expanded travel ban that hit 19 countries. Huge family separations, and the report even estimates a $12.5 billion hit to domestic tourism. And significantly, there were moves to challenge the 14th Amendment by trying to end birthright citizenship.
Wow. And what about the diversity, equity, and inclusion angle, DEI?
Yeah, a big focus. The report frowns this campaign against DEI not just as talk, but as a systematic push. It was about reframing affirmative action as unlawful racial preferences. So you had foundational policies like Executive Order 11446 being rescinded. That order mandates affirmative action for federal contractors, right? And they use federal funding as leverage. Pressure on universities like Duke, they faced a suspension of $108 million in research funds. Columbia reached a $200 million settlement.
Real financial pressure to dismantle DEI.
Exactly. A government-wide effort, the report says, closing DEIA offices.
So that's identity. What about civil rights more broadly? How does the report paint that picture?
It suggests a definite retreat. For LGBTQ plus people, there was this narrow definition of sex as strictly binary. That led to banning transgender individuals from the military, ignoring federal guidelines, the PREA guidelines for transgender women in prisons, and voting rights. The DOJ reportedly stepped back from challenging discriminatory redistricting, even supported voter purges. There was also a move, quite notably, to link things like homelessness and mental illness with criminality, ending housing first policies, pushing bans on urban camping.
It really does seem like these different areas all connect back to that central theme of, reshaping who belongs. But the report also talks about fundamentally changing the government machine itself, right? The bureaucracy.
Absolutely. The core goal described is eliminating the so-called deep state. A key plan mentioned is reinstating Schedule F. This would basically strip job protections from tens of thousands of federal workers, meaning they could be fired easily.
At will, yeah. Replaced with political loyalists. Project 2025 even calls for getting rid of whole agencies like the Department of Education. And we saw data getting suppressed, too. Things like the diversity module from the OPM database or climate change data from NOAA. Just gone.
And the courts, the judiciary.
That's presented as a real long game. The administration appointed 234 federal judges, 3 Supreme Court justices, the demographics reported, overwhelmingly white and male, many linked to the Federalist Society. And the report argues this ideological shift led straight to the Dobbs decision.
The overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Precisely.
What about pressure outside government on, say, civil society?
That's covered too. We mentioned the universities and funding threats over DEI. But interestingly, the report also details direct pressure on law firms, banning them from federal contracts if they challenged administration policies. It's quite a reach.
So pulling all this together, the policies, the institutional changes, what does the report ultimately say about the rule of law itself? Well, first, there was this huge number of executive orders, 143 in the first 100 days of the second term, which is unprecedented. Now, the report notes a really low win rate in court challenges, like 23%, often because the orders went too far, legally speaking, or didn't follow procedure.
Right.
But here's the thing. Even while being challenged, these orders created policy facts on the ground. The changes happened during the litigation, so the agenda moved forward anyway. And the report describes the Department of Justice as politicized internal memos, stopping new civil rights cases, a litigation freeze. It got serious enough that Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts in May 2025 is quoted giving a stark warning, describing the rule of law as endangered.
Wow. So this deep dive really paints a picture of a deliberate, systematic project, reshaping America, defining a narrower identity, centralizing power, changing civil rights. The report seems quite clear on whose America it thinks is being built and, well, who gets left out.
And perhaps the most lasting impact highlighted is this real erosion of public trust. Trust in core institutions. That just fuels the polarization we see, right?
Yeah.
And makes the whole system of checks and balances much harder to operate.
Which leaves us with a pretty heavy thought, doesn't it? If that political polarization makes it harder for institutions to even function, what does that mean for the basic agreement on facts and values, that shared factual and normative ground that a self-governing republic actually needs to thrive? Something for you to definitely mull over.